Welcome to SB UK's October webinar on the state of straw construction in the UK and Europe. For those unfamiliar, SB UK promotes best practice in straw building through our network of practitioners, designers, academics and trainers. Today's speakers, from a UK perspective, we have SB UK board members Annie Benton, Passive House Designer, and John Butler, Sustainable Building Consultant. And from French expertise perspective, we have Kevin Ledouget, an infrastructure expert, and Charlotte Levat, RFCP and ESBO board member, and Laura Goulois, carpenter. Our agenda, as you can see, is an introduction to straw construction. John Butler will kick us off with that, UK perspective by John and Annie. Strawbale external insulation, retrofit by Kevin. And the European perspective focus on France by Charlotte and Laurel. To sum it up, future outlook, let's look on the positive side of things. Annie Benton will bring that to a close, and then we will have a Q&A. So without further ado, if we can go on to the first slide. John Butler, over to you.
Hi, this will be quite quick. I've got 3 minutes to get through quite a lot. Just very briefly, this slide is of a straw bale, using straw bale as an external wall insulation in the UK. Something that hasn't happened very much in the UK, but hopefully will more. But you're going to hear more about retrofit with straw shortly. Can I have the next slide, please, Annie? So this will be familiar to some of you, but just kind of brief overview. Pretty much straw construction or straw bale construction began with the invention of the bale, or the baling machine particularly, because then we had straw in a kind of handy unit that you could stack and build with. The original baling machines probably didn't look very much like that one, but that's the basic principle. These days we still do that, and also we have prefab structural panels filled with straw, loose fill straw. It's basically just chopped straw blown into panels or blown into kind of timber framing, much as something like cellulose fibre is. You can also get compressed straw boards. So it's kind of the range of ways of building with straw has expanded. Interestingly, the chopped straw has slightly lower thermal conductivity, slightly more insulating, because it's got more pockets of little pockets of trapped air, basically. But straw generally is pretty well insulating, especially at the thicknesses we tend to use it at. Go on, Annie. Next one. Thanks. I think in the UK, or we definitely have what I think is the first EPD, Environmental Product Declaration, for straw as insulation material. This came about thanks to the Upstraw project. And that lays out quite clearly the kind of various environmental impacts of straw. EcoCocon now have one for their prefab straw bale panel system, and it's just giving us much more accurate information and sort of giving us a more robust basis for making the case for straw. Next one, please. Thank you. So the global warming potential is basically the carbon emissions. These are just comparing various insulation materials with straw over on the right, and these are the emissions of carbon per meter square, with the thicknesses adjusted to account for slightly different thermal conductivities. So it's the amount of insulation that will have the same insulating value, so it's a fair comparison. You can see kind of cellulose fibre and straw coming out very much the lowest carbon, and cellulose fibre is only coming out lower than straw because it's a recycled material. It's made from recycled newspapers, so that reduces it a bit further. If that was made with kind of virgin material, I think the impact's sort of up nearer the hemp jute fibre, that sort of second bar from the right. Next one, please. The EPD looks at a whole range of environmental impact indicators, not just carbon. This chart is quite a crude comparison. It's basically just adding up all the indicators for the different things to see where we come. It's not a totally reliable way of comparing them, because a tiny difference in one of those indicators might equal greater environmental harm than a larger difference in one of the others. But as a general overview, it's quite useful to get a rough idea of the kind of overall environmental impact. And pleasingly for us, or really that's why we're interested in it and promoting it in the first place, straw's coming out as the lowest environmental impact there over a range of factors. And all of that is before you even think about the fact that we're kind of storing carbon as well. So any carbon that's stored in the straw is released at the end of life, but for the lifespan of any building, that carbon which has been captured by the straw during growth, basically by photosynthesis, is kept out of the atmosphere. If you either burnt that straw or let it decompose, that carbon would be released within a few years. But thanks to us taking it aside and putting it in a building, we delay the release of that carbon by however long the building lasts, which, as we know, can be a very long time. And that's a useful kind of buffering effect at the very least.
Straw construction in the UK, where are we with this at the moment? The exact number of straw buildings are not known, but we do have maps and registers. This began through the Upstraw project. Some of you may know of this. It was a pan-European project that we were a part of a few years ago. And this has then gone on to, or at least sustained, the self-build mortgages. So we have a current position at the moment where people are building, self-building. Yes, they are working with constructors and builders, but they are building their homes on their own. So there are more mortgages made available. Increasing the understanding of need to switch to bio-based materials. We appreciate and we understand that this very much needs to be done. It is spreading wider as the industry is becoming more aware of the benefits of working with bio-based materials. There are more completed projects in almost all sectors, reducing the hippie weirdo perception, one of which we have had to overcome quite significantly. And I think a lot of people are realizing now with a panelized system, it enables people to work from a minimal perspective. Offsite panelized straw systems is what I'm referring to. You also have the jumbo bale construction, huge oversized straw bales, which is part of the equation as well. And it also means, if we're going to really wrap it up or to bring into the modern aspects of the construction sector, are the completed passive house projects. Builders are realizing that there are huge and significant benefits to merge the two systems. Next slide, please. So completed projects in many sectors. There are residential one-offs, and as I highlighted just a moment ago, the self-build sector is enabling that. There are residential multi-unit aspects as well. The image on the far left of the screen is the Lilac position or property in the UK, which is based in Leeds. There are commercial offices as well. The lower image highlights that, and commercial warehousing, community buildings and public one-offs such as visitor centres. Now, visitor centres, that just reminds me of the Bell House, the Strawbale UK, SBUC, we're involved in that. We have some people who are on this call who are part of that build. It was part of the Upstraw project. If you have time, do go and visit it. It's in Hastings. And the retrofit external wall insulation aspect is something which we are very much wanting to spread and promote within the sector. Not yet, but not far off, schools and developer housing, other aspects within the sector too. Let's go on to the next slide, please. So continuing with the developments within the UK, as part of the Upstraw project, in 2022, a number of members came together to draw up and draft and publicise the UK technical guide. It's freely available on our website. Please do go to it and have a look and download it. The evidence response to environmental audits, which we were a part of, the sustainable of the built environment. It was a part of the lobbying with the ACAN group, and we did that in 2021. Presently, right now, we are working on the UK translation of the French rules. Next slide, please. So key projects which change the perceptions of the wider community. You will see on the top left-hand side is the build, which is in self-build, which is in Hereford. Uri, who is one of the technical advisors for EcoCon, wonderful house that many people have spoken about, and I think it's even part of an open house, passive house annual event for you to attend and go to. The Hastings Visitor Centre, as I highlighted just a moment ago, which was built by the consortium of the UK straw builders, very popular, excellent, prominent site. The Gateway building at Nottingham University. The wonderful thing about that site is that the straw was located, thank you, Annie, the straw was located on the site. So in terms of, really thinking about ensuring that all of the benefits were very localized. And the bottom right-hand picture is of the modular affordable home from Agile. Next slide.
Sorry, Cyprian, jumped forward
Okay.
a bit too quick. So hi everybody. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges or opportunities, depending on how you might see them, that we've currently, that we believe we've currently got in the UK when it comes to using straw as a construction method. So the first thing I think is about regulations. So actually, I don't see the regulations personally as being a challenge. It's definitely more of an opportunity. The building regulations in the UK are based on technical standards and criteria in which straw meets those criteria and standards to do with thermal performance, moisture, structural, fire, etc. So I think it's a big misconception that the regulations are things that maybe are stopping straw construction, when actually that's not necessarily the case. So it's more of an opportunity, actually. Straw ticks those boxes, and our technical guide you can see on the screen now, that's available on our SBUC website. And that has loads of data and stuff in there that meets those criteria, so it's really clear. I think the next sort of aspect of it is about perception. In terms of how straw is perceived, and this ties in a bit to regulations in the respect of building control officers. So in the UK, we have building control, and they need to check building projects are built to the standards in which the government are setting in the regulations. And we can debate as much as we like about whether those regulations are relevant or not or need to be improved, which I'll touch on. But the perception is that things might maybe go wrong, so it rots, or it gets infested with rodents, or it's a vulnerable material. Now you're not wrong. If you build with it in a silly way that's not sensible, if it's not designed well and not detailed well, then things can definitely go wrong. But that comes down to the bigger challenge that in the UK construction industry, we are building poorly built buildings that don't perform. And often on sites, corners and things are being cut. So the perception that it's going to rot, well, it very much depends if you're going to soak it in water. So there's a huge mindset shift that has to change with perception in the UK about using straw. And I think part of that comes, a huge thing comes with a level of responsibility on site. We're not great in the UK for having a responsibility as contractors on sites to do a good job. And which is why passive house is brilliant, because passive house projects have to be certified, they're checked. So there's a real responsibility there for making sure you develop quality. Whereas in the UK, that's more of our barriers, I think, who's responsible for the quality, etc. But I think the idea of perception and changing mindset really is massively tied in to, business opportunities I'll come back to, but skills gaps. So if we don't upskill in the UK, and this is not just contracting companies, but also young people that are going into construction education, if it's not written into that education that they understand how straw works as a building material, as well as other bio-based building materials, actually, not just straw, then we aren't meeting the requirements for that. So we're sort of making more of a skills gap by avoiding it. And I think it's quite difficult, because it's a bit like chicken and the egg. When you speak to colleges, and I do a lot of this with my job, so I'm a technical advisor for ecological building systems, and I spend 90% of my time supporting architects and contractors with detailing and design for air tightness and using wood fibre, not even straw. And a lot of the time we're on sites just helping install that product, and that isn't even straw. So you really see that skills gap happening in front of you. I think that's quite a big challenge. But I think starting colleges is important. I think one of the challenges is that employers, contracting companies particularly, say that there isn't a demand for it. Therefore, why we can't support colleges in apprenticeships or funding. So it's a bit like, where do you start? Who starts? Do colleges just put it into educational programs, or do contractors demand it? I think probably it needs to come from education, but I think also education then needs support. I think as well, when it comes to business opportunity, there's a huge opportunity in the UK for contracting companies, professional building companies, to upskill in straw, and they need support in order to do that, which is what what we want to do, is make that more of a mainstream way of building and support in that development. There are some really great construction companies this way in East Anglia. There's one called Grocers Murphy, I think, and they've just built a big cobblage project with an architect firm in Norwich. And they've done that completely out of their comfort zone. They've adopted it, but they've built the most fantastic buildings. So I think there's a real opportunity there to utilize existing companies and also to start new ones and run them professionally with all the health and safety and all the protocols and everything like that. I think also, I don't know if you guys know about the Future Home Standard, but this is the new building regs coming out in 2025. There was lots of consultation. Some of you on the call might have put your point of view into these. I think it was really positive on reading the consultation document and seeing what the government had said to people's responses. But one of the things that popped out was this idea of embodied carbon. Now, the government are aware that we need to make buildings that are better insulated, and people agreed with that. But the embodied carbon aspect of it is not necessarily accepted in government at the moment, even though other organisations are starting to do that. However, we do have the UK Net Zero Carbon Building Standard that is going to be coming out. I think it was actually released in September, but there's a big pilot webinar happening tomorrow. I'll put the link on there, guys, if you want to access it. It's actually through CIBSE's website, but it's happening tomorrow at 10 till 11:30, I think. And it's basically running through this standard, and that is a great opportunity for straw, because obviously, as John said, it's photosynthesis absorbing the carbon. So we've got this huge opportunity that we could be sequestering so much carbon in buildings built with straw. So just something to shout out about the changes that are happening. I think it's quite positive, actually, a lot of positive responses. And I think the last sort of major opportunity here is in the Future Home Standard. There's a real focus on ventilation, indoor air quality, healthy buildings. And we know that natural building materials that are far less processed have lower VOCs, not all the time, but majority of the time. We also know there's quite a lot of research that's saying that it can improve indoor air quality using natural plasters. And I think we need more research in that. But I also think it's really viable to say that biobased could really come in to support that agenda in the Future Home Standard. So it's a really important thing. So yeah, there's lots of challenges, but I think overly, actually, there's opportunity that's here. And the last thing is, we have a huge opportunity to work with, the French are speaking today about amazing stuff that's going on. France are really leading the way with regulations and examples of buildings and quality. So I think learning from our European friends and asking for help and support and using their guidance is an amazing opportunity. And we're just very lucky to have you guys on the call today as well. Planning consent. So this was with one of our other S-Board members, SBUC members, Julia, but she's not here today. But she basically sort of put this slide together about planning consent. But I think there's quite a lot of misconception in planning, that planning officers don't like straw and things like that. But actually, we find that that's not necessarily the case. They're not judging a project by its construction necessarily. Sometimes actually bio-based materials can come in under favour, particularly in exceptional builds. But often it's to do with local vernacular that's stopping a planning coming through. And actually, straw is very versatile. It can have different claddings and different finishes. It can be made to look like a normal standard construction in the UK. So I think there's a massive maybe misconception there that's an issue. It shouldn't be an issue. It comes down to design and supporting, I think, our architects in the UK and we have some amazing ones that are actually members of SBUC, but really supporting them in designing to, meet those vernacular criteria, but also to design the detail in to prevent issues like, moisture getting in, etc., as I mentioned before. over to Kevin. Cyprian, are you taking this one?
No, right. So can we progress on to Charlotte's presentation, please? Because Kevin is
Certainly.
not.
Charlotte, yes, certainly. Here we go.
Yes. So, hi everyone. I'll try to take the French perspective of what's going on in France, because we are now pioneer in the world about the development of the sector and straw building sector. So just to let you explain how it works. The French straw building sector is the national sector, the RFCP. And we are organized with local associations. And now 6 regional associations have been developed and structured and have seen agreements. So it means that they are the national sector in region. So they help the development of the sector and they are like connected with us. And the 3 other associations are now currently being developed and structured, but for many reasons and parties' resources, it's in progress. So the next, please. Okay, so just to understand how it worked in France for more than 25 years now. We don't have many resources. Now we have 7 employers, more than 1,000 members, but most of our business model was based on our activity are financed by mainly our members' subscriptions. So it means that we were, we could say like this, like a poor association based with volunteers and all the professionals involved in the straw building sector was most of them volunteers. So the fact is that, okay, we didn't have many resources, but we get our big results. Like for now, we've got like more than 10,000 buildings insulated with straw in France for new construction and retrofits as well. Almost 500 new projects per year. And we can say that right now we are focused on equipment, school facilities, collective housing. We are really, really far from a single house for families. This is not our direction we are taking now. The idea is to develop public equipment and headquarters, so big buildings. And we've got more than 5,000 professionals trained in ProPay. So we'll talk about the trainings later. And we've got like normative frames called French rules for the new constructions. The next, please. Okay. For this year's, it's like a huge new for us. We had been sponsored by French government with the idea that the French government wants to support the development of bio-based sectors as straw in construction, especially. So we organized with 14 partners projects with a total of 7 million euros split on the 14 partners. So there are some laboratories, companies, associations like RFCP or Nebraska. And the idea is to expand the choice of possible resource. Right now, we are focused on wood straw. It's the wood straw like written in the French rules, but we want to use, for example, rice straw and other kind of straw. So the idea is to develop and to enable to use new products. I will be focused later on that one. To expand the range of use of straw, because our normative frames, which are like common rules, common techniques, are quite like straight right now. So we want to go further. And the idea is to validate retrofit technique and load-bearing technique. So we are focused right now on a new normative frame. I will talk about that as well. We want to demonstrate the benefit of plastered construction system, to generate feedback, because you need to understand that to create a normative frame in France, like the French rules, we needed feedback. So we needed existing projects. So we needed project owners which are committed and building controllers involved in the idea to take risks, to develop many projects, to have enough data, to have feedbacks, to have this data to help to write normative frames. So it's how it works for the French rules, and it's how it's going to work for the retrofit normative frames and load-bearing normative frames. And the idea is all this work done for 5 next years is to share knowledge. So to have like a big open data source and to share everything we are working on to have this common knowledge and to incorporate Straw to regulatory documents. So it's yes. Next, please.
Mm.
So if we take the idea how is Straw is used, as you know, we've got the prefabrication or field on site. So this is the frame we have with the French rules right now for new construction only. Next, please. So these French professional rules had been written by professionals themselves, like, as I said, volunteers. And it had been approved by Building Quality Agency in France in 2012. So this normative frame describes how to use Strawbale for installation as a plaster support only for new buildings. So you need, as a professional, to do this 5 days training, to give access to insurance, to understand how Straw is working, how it's working for physical in construction and everything, to be allowed to use Straw in your project. As an architect, as an engineer, and as a project owner, you can do that. Next, please. So that's this kind of trainings we have, so this 5 days for professionals, and we've got specific trainings to help architect, carpenter, coacher, insurer, controller, electrician, plumber to understand how it works, to work with a Straw building project. Next. Okay, so about the new constructions, I would like to show you some example of big projects we do have in France. So we've got like sports building, for example. The one there on the right is a senior village. So it's multiple single houses for seniors. Next, please. This one is a cultural center. It's a concert place in the middle of a vineyard. So it's a really beautiful project. So you can see that we've got like plenty of different scales of project using Straw as installation. Next, please. A fire station. Actually, we've got 3 fire stations. So it's like a big joke, but it means that everything is controlled about this specific problem with the fire. So it's not a problem to build a fire station with installation with Straw. Next, please. So the highest, it's a bit an old project right now, 10 years ago. It was a multiple housing. So this one is out of the normative frame, but it means that it's a social, actually, owners who decided to make these examples with the highest building insulated with Straw. So it means that even if we are out of like common technique, we can build because we've got this data of the common technique, and we take risks with a person and people like involved in the idea to get in the innovation based on the common technique and how can we do out of this common technique. So social owners, building controllers, we are like an ecosystem where everybody is involved and want to take it to get more data. Next, please. Okay, and the biggest, this one is a school in Paris. So it's just to take some example that we've got plenty of projects with different scales and many equipment, public equipment with kids and there is no problem with that because everything is like controlled and framed with the normative frame we have for the new construction. And for the other projects, next step, please. For example, the retrofit and the load-bearing straw projects. As I said, we need data to create this normative frame. So the new professional rules are in progress. And so, yes, we need projects, existing projects, to create this data, to create this normative frame. So it's, as I say, it's a circular vision of how we can get the normative frames right now, is to having more projects. So everything is, how to explain that? We use the common technique and we try to be a little bit out, applied to retrofit and load-bearing straw. It's how it helps to get insurance to build and to help social, for example, social owners to be committed to this kind of project. Next, please. Okay, one of other idea of using straw is blowing insulation and boards, and I will show you a project with this kind of. Okay, so I will be focused on one interesting project which had been made by Nebraska. So it was in the south of France, an old clinic converted into a student accommodation. So it's just a project just had been finished a few weeks ago. And this project is quite interesting because it makes retrofits. The fact that we use rice straw, so it's out of the common technique. And we use as well boards of straw. So in that case, it's a lot of tons of straw, 30 tons. So yes, next please. Okay, the idea was to use like a giant shelf on the facade, and using the orientation of the building to use the natural light and the natural heat with the sun. So, for example, the balconies are on the south, and we decided to use boards. So it's a thinner board of straw, and to use like regular straw on the other facades. Next, please. Okay, so uprights are suspended from the slab nose, so we can see on the picture. Okay, so we've got pieces of wood, and in the middle of these pieces of wood, we've got the straw. Next, please. The cells are fixed to the uprights, as we can see there. Next, please. And the straw, so it's a like regular straw bale, 36 centimeter. Okay. So the idea is to have an anti-spill system. Okay, so we put the straw in the middle of the piece of wood, and we use automatic strapping machine to maintain the straw. So the idea is we've got some rivets on the wall. So this picture on right are not exactly this project, but this is exactly the same technique. So we've got rivets on the wall, and we've got like plastic binders, and the strapping machines stick, we can say like strap the plastic binders to maintain the straw ball on the wall. And after we can apply some clay plaster on it. Next, please. So this is the picture of the project, and we can see on the base on the right picture that because to preserve the building for the in water level of water, or how can I say that? Yes, the water. We've got like oh, I don't know the word. Yeah, I get you understand that the fact that we don't have Strawbale until the floor, but we've got like a little bit distance to protect the bio-based material. Next, please. Okay, so just to let you know, to explain you about the plan. Okay, so we used, as I said, the orientation of the building to decide which kind of bio-based material was the best at the best place. So we can see the balconies on the south, and the rest on the north is the yes. Next, please. Better to show you the okay. So we had two options. A thick insulation sabotage the use of balconies. It's what we thought, and the thin insulation will fit more like table or chairs. So it's the use of the balconies. We decided that because we are on the south, we could use like only a panel and not like a Strawbale. Next, please. So the idea is, yes, the right materials to the right place. So better solar gain daily with thinner wall and decreased thermal performance curve because we are on the south orientation. Okay, so this is just an example of which kind of board we use. So we use Copano, which is a 99% bio-based panel board, sorry. Made with straw and only the polyester warp yarn interior. And right now, this company is working on R&D to replace, to bio-source this. So this is a really easy cutting and a quick nailer installation. So it's you can use it for retrofit outside or inside an apartment, for example, and you can apply. You can put some clay plaster as well. So yeah, we can see an example of a good clay plaster base. And for us, that is really important in our sector in general, that to use sites as a social intensity and training support. And for example, this project was really important because it helped to train many people and to have a more professional trained on straw building and what it is straw building. Yeah, that's it for me. I hope it was clear enough for everybody.
Okay, at the risk of making you multitask, can we go back to Kevin, please?
And yes, just I would like to add something that this association Nebraska get a label, which is like recognized for the respect for the environment. It's a label that some companies can get, and it helps clients to get some grants to retrofit buildings. So yeah, that's important to say because it's not easy to get a label as a bio-based using company.
That's very handy. Thank you, Charlotte, and thank you for that presentation. Very, very informative. Right, next, Kevin, are you okay? We had some technical issues earlier. Is everything all right with you?
Well, I think I need to change my laptop. That's the conclusion.
Okay. So we can hear you now. Let's go. Let's get on.
Right. So I just talk relatively briefly about retrofitting with Strawbale. I will caveat that by saying that this is something I've looked at 15 years ago, and since then I've not really been doing anything on it on Strawbale. So I do develop low carbon infrastructure, and I've got a personal interest in doing this to my house soon. So at the time, I thought, so I was doing a postgraduate at Cambridge University, and I thought, you know what, has anyone ever tried to insulate the existing houses with Strawbale. And I was coming from that because of the importance of retrofit. We've got tens of millions of houses in the UK, France as well, and across Europe that need to be retrofitted if we want to reduce the acceleration of climate change, but also adapting to new climatic conditions. And as you know, there are different ways of doing it. And I thought, yeah, do a Strawbale. That sounds much healthier way of doing it. So that was the brief, essentially, was looking at how much of a good idea is it to do this? And if so, has anyone done it? So I went on to try to find people who've done it. And I came across people in the US, in France, in the UK, in the Czech Republic, in Canada. There are probably a few other countries in Central Europe as well, who actually had tried to do this. Well, I'd done this, all using different techniques. And I talked to them, I interviewed them, asked them why they were doing it, how they did it, what it did for them. And the idea was to be able to look at that in detail, but also step back and look at it from a systemic perspective. So in a nutshell, why doing it? And I think you're probably all aware of why doing it, but just the salient point for me, where it's a material which is great for sequestering carbon for the lifetime of the insulation. Now, there's a question mark as to how long this is going to last. There's a house in France, La Maison Feuillette, which was built 104 years ago, and it's still there, still standing. It's timber frame with straw infill, as there were very few building materials following World War I. And they do last a while if you take good care of them. They're low toxicity material, and that was something that was very important for me. And since Grenfell, you can see, so Grenfell, for the French people on the call, it was a terrible accident that happened when the external insulation of a building caught fire in London, and many people died. So you don't have that with Strawbale. It's a local material, which means lower carbon and so on, and it's good for the local economy. But also the breathability and moisture management properties of Strawbale makes it a very interesting material for external insulation. The UK is quite a wet country. I mean, I come from Brittany in France. It's also wet, but it's kind of good to have something which can manage moisture and which doesn't lose all its insulating properties if there is a bit of moisture in it. There are limitations though. So I've put an image here, which is a retrofit that was carried out back in 2008 or thereabout in Laval, where someone decided to retrofit with Strawbale, and you can see it's quite thick. So the thickness means that for some building it's just not going to work out. Some terrace housing in the UK, you don't have necessarily the space in the street to do it. They've got no front yard. Where your windows are installed, for example, could make a difference as well, like the detailing, the corners, what you're going to do with your gutters. Because it's thicker, you need to have an overhang on your roof. And if you don't have it, in the first place, well, it might be a bit difficult to, could be costly and difficult to add. It's quite time consuming to install. So it's one of those relatively low capital but high labor method of construction. So it's great for self-builders. But because it takes quite a while to install, the weather becomes a very important variable. So in the UK, I would not install that without protecting from the rain, unless you're very optimistic, or doing it in sections, essentially. As Charlotte would have explained, it's quite a specialized skill as well. So people need to know what they're doing. And I've seen all sorts of techniques to do it, sticking it to the wall with clay, holding it with, so kind of the technique that Charlotte was showing. So putting something in the wall like a ring, and then essentially putting some ropes or strips to maintain it against the wall. Quite a few people build also a wooden structure, and they jam the bale between the wooden structure. The variability of the straw bale seems to be quite an important factor as well. I mean, like for building new building with straw bale, you need to find the right one. It needs to be the right density, orientation of the straw as well. What type of straw, and is it? But one limitation also I came across was planning restriction. I live in Surrey, south of London, and I'm considering retrofitting my bungalow with straw bale. But I know I'm gonna have, if I do that, I'm gonna have to be ready for a battle with my local councillors. Potentially, it might be okay, but yeah, I think if it's rendered, it's
we will join. Kevin, we will join you in that battle. We're running
okay.
a bit close to time.
Let's move on to the next slide then.
Please.
Quick example. This is Birtle Village in the UK. I think it was Somerset. Old village hall built in late 30s, 1939 maybe. Not a great building to be in, and the community wanted to do something about it, and they decided to build an agricultural barn around the building, and then retrofitting straw bale around it along the walls. And if you move on to the next slide, and then putting just sheep wool in the roof, untreated sheep wool. So they told me it smelled quite a lot. And there you can see that the technique was to build some joist-based structure where they would jam the straw bale. They used some straps also to maintain them and to compress them. They put a mesh for the insects between the existing structure and the straw bale, and then they rendered the straw bale with clay, local clay. But they didn't need to do like a perfect job, because then it was clad with what they call it, rectified cladding. And so they could have bought a new building, which at the time would have cost £500,000, but they did all the work for £150,000 instead, by reusing the existing building. But also a lot of people in the community helped them. So there was a lot of free labor. and it's a quite a beautiful actually community project. Can we see the next slide? Can't remember if it was all on Bertel. So just to finish on Bertel, the key for the project to be successful was that some of the people involved knew what they were doing. There were farmers around, they had their own tractors, they could lift stuff. People were quite DIY savvy, and they had a lot of free labor as well. So now stepping back in terms of the research inside at the time, and bearing that was 15 years ago. So I'm more than happy for people to look at it. They might be outdated. So at the time, I looked at it from a large-scale implementation. I did identify that this is not a silver bullet. This is something, but that's something that is actually a valid solution for a small proportion of the building stock in the UK. But we're talking what, 20 million buildings, 25 million building. Actually, that is just residential, because you got other buildings, I think, potentially. So it could be tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of buildings where you could do that potentially. It has a lot of advantages. I looked at the cost, but I don't think it's that relevant necessarily to talk about it now. It's not too different from new building with straw to some extent. So there's a niche market for it. I think in the long term, it could become more commercially competitive, but that's going to depend on the policy and regulation landscape. So there are things that could be done to support that kind of construction. So it wouldn't just be straw bale; it could apply to other more environmentally friendly method of construction. But there's also a role for modern method of construction, like those panels that Charlotte was showing a bit earlier on. How can you commoditize the straw bale, so you have more standardized straw-based products? A few companies are doing that, as you know. I mean, you all know more about straw bale than I do. But I can also see that there are challenges for external straw bale installation, which are very similar to other challenges that we have across the whole construction industry in terms of supply chain. The business as usual construction already doesn't have enough supply chain. So something needs to be done there, so that more people are trained, and it's a bit of a snowball effect. It's not just fix that and this is going to lead to this. It's all those actions need to be carried out in parallel, and that includes also savvy marketing. So I'll talk about it in my dissertation. Being on grand design would make a massive difference. Have a straw bale retrofit on grand design, and like that's going to dwarf like anything we ever done on straw bale, except that if we hadn't done it, well, if you hadn't done it, then you wouldn't be able to have it on grand design. And then as another point, and maybe things have changed since then, but the people I was talking to, including farmers, was saying that the kind of balers producing the straw bale that you need to make the external insulation, they're very rare. There are not many of them, and they're very old for some of them as well. So yeah, the farmers I was talking to were like, well, why would I use this? But they're farmers, so they're very commercially savvy as well. If they can sell good quality bale at a reasonable price, I think they'd be, some of them, pretty pleased to do it.
Just a few of our thoughts about potential areas of growth in the UK. I think actually what Charlotte was saying about having an ecosystem of professionals that are comfortable with straw and wise to straw and aware of it is actually what we want to create. And we are a far way off that at the moment, even though we have keen people in pockets. So I think that was like a really profound thing that I would have added to this slide if I could edit it. I think things like the affordable housing, social housing, public building, using MMC, using Ecocom panels, or likewise other companies, is a way maybe in the UK market that there is an opportunity. I still think the self-build sector is a leading driver anyway, and it's a good thing. It's a great material. So again, we'll continue to grow. Large scale retrofits, I think, to be continued, well, to be confirmed, I think, and to be continued in terms of looking at projects, learning from what you're doing in France, learning about guidance in terms of teaching people how to do it. I think there's a huge potential for it, but I also think there needs to be a lot of care taken technically. And I think we need to invest a lot more in monitoring and evaluating that, and then seeing how we can drive that forward. But I think, like as Kevin was saying, it's a plethora for retrofit. You know, we've got 85% of the buildings in the UK need to be retrofitted. They're all still going to be here by 2050, and there's you know, they're built poorly. So we need a whole variety of options. So I think it's good that it's a contender. We need more research, as I think a few other speakers have pointed at, you know, more in situ data for performance for straw, things that we're going to have to use to prove that straw performs the way it does. I think that will help with building control and help with more of the actual sector development itself, rather than it being biased opinions. So I think that's always helpful. And then I think the most important thing comes down to education, as Charlotte's, you know, touched on, with great provision in France and professionally renowned provision as well. I think we've got a lot to learn in the UK. We've got some big steps to make, but I think we'll be looking to France for support in how we do that. But education, yeah, most important thing. If we can't build more with straw if people don't know how to do it. So I think that's sort of the area of growth really. And yeah, Sipran, I don't know whether you're having last endpoints.
I'll come on to this now. Thank you, Annie. So I hope you all enjoyed that. That was a fabulous session. A call to action. Yes, join SB UK. Please become a member. Go to our website and you can find joining links from there. Participate in the training programs, as Annie outlined just a moment ago. Education is key. Advocate for supportive policies. It's important. You may not have to be the most vociferous of political people, but if there are opportunities for you to fill in surveys, consultations, or even lobby your local MP, then do so. So we're going to move on now to the Q&A. I noticed there were some questions. I'm going to go to Boise, because you've been waiting in the wings for quite some time. So I've asked you to unmute yourself. Boise.
Yeah, so my camera's not working at the moment, so I'm still gorgeous and good looking, by the way, Cipran.
Yes, yes, I know.
This question is for Charlotte. How do you get around the condensation buildup on your metal eye fixings that you put into the wall, that stone wall? Because when I've done any builds, even put in those fixing straps, once you take out the trucker straps and you put in the plastic fixing straps, we then crimp on a small metal tag that joins the two ends together. We would always then wrap that in Hessian that has been coated in clay or lime or whatever you're doing. So I didn't notice that those metal eyes that you fixed into the stonework were covered with anything. So are you not concerned about moisture and condensation buildup?
Not really, because actually this is a residual. I mean, the rivet is disappearing inside of the straw. So the plaster you have on it is not touching directly the rivet, you know. So it's we don't have any problematic with this kind of system right now. And the thickest, just a question. Yeah, the thickness of the plaster help to don't have this kind of capillarity. So we don't have any feedback kind of problem. And actually, the rivet is going out of the wall really like 5 centimeters, so it's not touching the plaster. I don't know if am I clear?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not the fact that it's touching the plaster, but whenever you put metal inside straw bale, there's a potential for a build-up of condensation or moisture, which would then eventually rot that straw bale out over time. Like I said, when we do it, whenever we have any metal which is absolutely
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but in this case, I don't know how we could have this kind of moisture problem because how to explain this? The respiration of the breathing of the wall. I mean the system is I don't know how to explain this in English. We don't have I just can't say that we don't have any feedback with this kind, because it's really residual. So I mean, to get some condensation, you need some air, and you need like the place for the water to skip in, you know. And you can't have this kind of problem with retrofit. And
maybe Charlotte, if you can.
I'm sorry. En fait, in fact, Charlotte, I want to help Charlotte.
Yes.
You know,
no,
just because she's a little bit lost in English, because it's very it's very late. It's just, we have just one rules in the French rules. It's that you have an SD between one for the outside. You know what I mean, Charlotte?
Yeah, I know. Yes.
Okay. So for me, it's the answer of this question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Can I jump in quickly on that one, Cyprian? Sorry. Just, I think another point is that those metal fixings are very much on the warm side of the straw. So there's much less chance of any kind of dew point temperature-wise anyway, because the straw...
Why do you have metals
those.
in the straw bales making in the outside retrofit?
Sorry, I missed that.
Sorry, why do you have metals in contact with straw bales in your case?
In a situation like the one that was being questioned, where there's a bracket fixing a timber to the wall or providing for a loop strap to tie the bales back, I've actually done that myself, and we didn't do anything to the
straps. The straps is in polypropylene. Straps is in plastic, so you have no metal.
The strapping is plastic. It's the metal hooks that was being questioned. But my point is, it's not a dew point, and it's not a risk anyway, because it's on the warm side of the insulation. Plus, what you were saying about the SD value, that the movement of the moisture will be, it's full vapor open anyway. But I think we should probably move on to the next question.
It could be a problem if you have a big piece of metals, but if you have a small point of metals, it's nothing.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. We need to move on. Matt Davenport asked a question. Kevin, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, but Matt asked the question. The consultants are critical. In fact, actually, Matt, do you want to ask that question yourself? I'm going to ask you to unmute. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're too shy. No?
Yes. Yeah, sorry about that. Took a while to find the button. Really, I suppose it's as simple as that. I think it's one of those with any burgeoning sort of industry. Sorry, that's my 9-year-old just taking the first chance to speak. Elizabeth, shush, please. Yeah, with anything that's sort of a growing industry, everything needs to be supported. My issue when I wanted to do passive house using straw bales last year was I just could not find any engineer that would take the work on. I literally had engineers laughing down the phone at me, people I've worked with for 20 years. So I think on-site training is absolutely critical. Having a labour force that understands the consequences, the unintended consequences that may occur. That's all really critical. But unless we've got the consultants that can back it up as well,
Right.
that can unlock the doors or open the doors, I
Okay.
think we're going to struggle. So I think if there's
Okay.
something that Strawbale could maybe try and start pulling together through its members and or something like that, some kind of central resource, I think that'd be really, really, really useful.
Well, you'd be unsurprised to hear, or maybe surprised to hear, that we currently have some working groups that are taking forward that kind of work. If you want to join us, you're welcome to get involved. And each group is designated a specific task. So, for example, we're looking at the financial aspects, we're looking at the standards and building regulations. So I very much agree with you. It's one which we are looking at. So thanks for putting that out there.
Yeah.
Kevin, you asked a question, and I think we're just going to take one more after this because time is really moving on. Do you want to unmute yourself? Are you able to do that?
No, I've asked. John already answered. I'm not gonna. This is it's not a very important question. I think Svetla had her hand.
Okay, Svetla.
Svetla.
Okay, thanks, John. Svetla, let's go to you. You have a question.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, hello. Yes, I just want to say thank you to everyone, and maybe just a very quick question, if possible, to Charlotte, regarding the fire safety regulations in France, and regarding, can you just tell us in 2 words, like if there is something specific that worth mentioning?
Yes. Okay. On this website of our FCP, I can give you on the chat the address. You can find all the normative database we have, especially about the fire, and all the protocols we followed with laboratories. And right now, I can tell you that we can have protection. We call it in France REI, so REI, 120 minutes with a straw wall and wood and plaster. So you can have everything on our website, and maybe can help you about the protocol maybe you want to follow. So it's an open source. You can use it for yourself. It's actually, as we're trying to do on ISBA is to, and I'm specialized on the action group with the Brussels and European Commission, is to help the using as the protocol we already made in France, split in other countries, and to discuss with the European Commission how we can use all this data, all these protocols we already made with laboratories recognized in Europe for the other countries. So you can use these documents. I don't know if it's what you were looking for, Svetlana.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Charlotte. Right, I'm going to wrap this up because we are well over time. Thank you all to our speakers. Thank you all for attending tonight. This presentation will be available in the coming days. Thank you, Laura. It will be available in the next few days on our YouTube channel. And I'm going to say good night or good morning, wherever you are. And I hope you will take care, and we will speak to you all very soon. Stay tuned for the next webinar in November. A wonderful highlight on straw building and self-building. So take care, everyone, and good night.